Hey guys, there's been a lot of changes to Amazon PPC, so I put this video together to point out three really big changes that everybody needs to be aware of. My name is Stephen Pope, I'm the founder of My Amazon Guy, and the first change I want to point out is when you create a campaign, you're going to see a section called Additional Changes. In here, there's an opt-in function to change your bids to increase them on a high traffic day. Now, the good news is that this is opt-in, not opt-out, which means unless you check this checkbox, Amazon's not going to automatically enroll you in it. But I would recommend double checking this and making sure it's not enrolled, because congratulations, Amazon, you found a new way to get Amazon dollars out of us. More PPC spend on your platform. You're running out of room for ads, so you're finding clever ways to just spend more on the same inventory that's available. Basically, what this allows Amazon to do is increase bids, which they created a default rule like this for 50% bid increases. For example, on a Prime Day deal day. Yes, traffic does go up on Prime Day. No, I would not recommend bidding 50% extra on those days. A lot of people are going to get out of their campaign budgets very quickly. You're going to spend more for less results. I just don't recommend it. Now, would I increase my bids on Black Friday? Absolutely. Would I increase my bids on Cyber Monday? Absolutely. Not for Prime Day, but I would for those big holiday rushes. But typically speaking, that big Turkey 5 weekend, Cyber Monday and Black Friday and everywhere in between, is the beginning of a rotation of high spend, not just a one-off day. And so what happens with Prime Day typically is that it's basically robbing Peter to pay Paul, i.e., you see week sales before and after Prime Day /week/ however many days they're doing Prime Day, whenever they do it. Seems to be increasingly death spiraling down for the amount of Prime Days there are. And so what happens is that on the week or on the month, you're static anyway. So there's no reason to spend extra specifically on Prime Day, because it all washes out anyway. So you're spending more to get the same sales, essentially is what that translates to. So this is a very scary change. And it would not surprise me if one day you randomly log in and that this is checked off, i.e. Amazon has a glitch and then magically makes everybody increase their bids simultaneously, which allows them to claim, well, everybody else was increasing your bids and you increased them, and so we didn't do anything wrong. I can just forecast that happening at some point. So this is the biggest thing that everybody needs to be aware of. Make sure you're not using this unless you want to, which I don't know about that, especially not a 50% increase, maybe like a 10% increase or something like that. So that's the first change. The second is inside of the campaign types, you now have the ability to show your products on TV. And Amazon announced that they're now allowing your ads specifically on Netflix. And it's kind of crazy to me that some people aren't opting out of ads on Netflix, but there are some people who are paying a lower subscription fee and seeing ads, which is crazy because it brings us back to cable. And it was the whole point of Netflix, right? Was to get rid of ads and to have more control. But here we are in 2025 doing a full cycle of reversion all the way back to 2008. And now we have cable TV, except it's a streaming service called Netflix with ads. But that aside, you can now create campaigns to show directly on TV. And so you'll see this new campaign creation type right here. They're putting it under sponsored display and TV. So it's interesting that we've got video ads in the sponsored brand section, and now we have it in the display section as well. And honestly, it probably deserves its own ad type by itself, video ads or TV ads or something like that. But the TV ad aspect does have a sexy ring to it. We are going to see a lot of people jump on this just because they're like, oh, this is new, it's a cool thing. A lot of small brands probably shouldn't touch this. The bigger brands obviously should. It's the brand somewhere in the middle where that litmus, we don't really have a good feel for this at this particular junction of like, hey, how big should you be before you test this? But it is kind of fun. And if you have good videos already created, I would recommend it, because we have seen great results on sponsored brand video, which is in the sponsored brand section. And in theory, they should do good inside of other platforms. However, with all new things, trackability, traceability, effectiveness are all unknowns. So you don't know how well it's going to do for you and whether you should do it. And those are the things you have to consider when testing out a new platform. So if you're already uncomfortable with your ACoS today, if you're already uncomfortable with the amount of spend that you do have on PPC, you don't want to necessarily test a new ad type that nobody has any intel on at this stage. So something to think about there, but definitely worth testing if you're itching to grow or you're want to do something new, or if you're sophisticated and you already feel like you've hit diminishing returns on your other sponsored products. definitely check this out. Now, I recently put out some data on how you should allocate your budget. Something like this would be a one-off test in addition to that. Here's the guide I put out 7 months ago about how you should do your PPC allocation. So if you're a brand with $1 million or less gross, put 95% in sponsored products, 5% in sponsored brands, primarily video. Inside of 1 to 5 million annual gross, 85% sponsored products, 14% sponsored brands, and 1% display. And then finally, brands 5 mil plus, just gonna move an extra 10% over into display. So essentially, what ends up happening with the 440 some odd brands that my Amazon guy currently operates, the statistical average is 1% display, 9% brands, and the rest goes into about 91% in sponsored products. So here's what we recommend by size, and then the reality versus the recommendation does see a little bit of a differential. So it's interesting to see that, but when you're looking at something like display ads and those settings, you do need to keep in mind that you're going to be testing out something brand new without any prior data to it. When you go to launch the new video ad and you create the campaign creative right here, here's some specs to be aware of. You're looking at 1920 by 1080 on a minimum frame size. They do want a 500 MB or smaller file size. That may be tricky for some of you guys with the video editing. You have to maybe shrink some files or so. They give you some file formats and what to do. I frequently find it a little challenging sometimes to transfer file formats into something that Amazon likes. It can be a little tricky with that. Length 6 to 45 seconds. I think 30 seconds probably is always going to be the sweet spot. 15 at minimum. I wouldn't do something smaller than 15 personally, but I think 30 is probably the sweet spot. 15 is probably a secondary sweet spot because then you get a little bit of a bigger bang for your buck, but still get that message out there. One thing I'll mention is one mistake I frequently see is that a lot of times people will start their video on black. I don't recommend that. A still frame of black should never be used in any video format, whether you're posting it to social media, TikTok, YouTube, or any advertising platform known to man. It is the #1 most common mistake I see made with video editors is they assume we need to fade in or fade out of black. Just don't do it. There's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't, but primarily being the fact that when somebody shares a video, especially if it's like a LinkedIn or a YouTube video, they'll actually see the still frame in black instead of seeing the video itself, which then hurts the shareability. Now, that's a little less applicable for a Netflix ad per se, but the principle still applies. You want the consumer to be every single frame seeing your product, not seeing black. There's just no point. It's a wasted space. The video ads can be seen before a show rolls or in the middle of a show. So there's a middle roll aspect as well. I have seen this on some of like the Peacocks of the world, some of the secondary streaming services. And I got to tell you, a midstream roll is incredibly off-putting, but the beginner roll is less off-putting to me as a consumer. So if they ever give us the chance to pick between the two, I would always go with the before a show when I'm paying attention, because the last thing you want to do is have your product associated with the interruption of your cliffhanger while you're watching Star Trek or whatever. One big thing to note about video stream rolling ads, there's CPM model, which means you bid by, per 1,000 impressions. And instead of building this out by like, hey, I'm going to spend $1 per click, instead you could have $100 per click, but you have a CPM model of $15 to be seen 1,000 times. And the way that this works is you increase the bid. If you're really like gung-ho, you could put a bid of 25. You could even put a bid of like 10, which is the lowest amount they're going to let you. So these are very high and potentially expensive protective mechanisms for ad bidding. And I have been in the advertising performance marketing industry for 20 or so years. I have seen quite a bit of changes, and the CPM model is always the hardest to optimize against. CPC is fairly easy, fairly common. CPA is a little less known. It's cost per acquisition, so you're only paying when you acquire the customer. So like something like Google AdWords has had that embedded for probably 8, 9, 10 years now. But Amazon will probably never use the CPA. They don't have to, I guess. But the CPM model, just be cautious with this. I would test it at the lowest bid possible, $10, until you get some initial data. and then from there, customize accordingly. Now, with display video in Seller Central directly, you don't get a lot of choice on where your ads are showing up. Over time, we may see some segmentation become available. And in some other platforms, DSP or whatever, they do give you some more segmentation and filtering to work with. So the chances of your product being seen by the right people diminishes, which means you're going to spend more for less results. So just be careful with that when you're first testing this. The more generic your product, the safer you are, the less likely this will impact you, however. The third and final change I just want to make you guys aware of, if you are a B2B product, there's a cool new way to target just Amazon business customers. Now, this is pretty niche. I don't know the exact numbers, but I want to guess less than 1% of Amazon Prime customers are in the Amazon Business Program. But this does allow a B2B strategy to specifically target them. So for example, if I have a Business Prime account and I'm looking for toilet paper, I'm looking for things I stock my office with, staplers, you name it, and you sell one of those products and you have a B2B discount where you sell 20 of these at 10% off, this is going to be something that a B2B buyer is looking for. And if you advertise directly for B2B, you hit your customers. So for those of you who have a B2B-like product, this is something I would absolutely test. And the fact that they're allowing this segmented off could mean that they're going to give discounted inventory for those that use it, because they're more likely to convert if you're showing the right ad to the right customer at the right time at the right price. And so something to check out if you have a B2B product, I would enroll in this, I would test it. With any new ad type, I do recommend testing it even if you're unsure about it, but only if you have a couple extra percentage points to give up to collect that data. When it comes to advertising, it's totally pay for play. It's totally pay to perform. And the only way to find out if something's going to work is if you actually spend money on it. So that's the challenge that people have when trying to find out if something's right for them. The only way to find out the answer to that is to spend money on it. All right, so those are my advertising updates from Amazon today. There's quite a few other things that keep coming out. Amazon's making a lot of changes going into Black Friday coming up here, not too far in the too distance. If anybody needs help with advertising, go check out myamazonguy.com/PPC. We have a bunch of tips and stabilization ideas, suggestions, things you can do to get your campaign going. We talk about how all the campaigns are set up, and we have about 75 videos on the channel just dedicated to PPC, specific frequently asked questions, all those good things. So check out these PPC videos next.